Hello and good evening, guys. Hopefully, you can hear me and you can see me. So, if you could just post a comment in the box of the live video, just to let me know that this is all working, that would be amazing. Because I do always worry that I'm just talking to myself here. So, if you could just post a comment in the comments box, that would be fantastic, just so that I know that people can hear me and see me and everything is working okay. Hello, Alvin. Great to see you here. Hopefully, everything's working all right, all the way over there in Australia. Hello, Cedric. How are you? You're right. Um, great. Don, hello. Thanks for joining. Great to see so many people on already. Um, and David. Hi, David. How are you? You doing all right? How's the move? Living in the wonderful new flat. Viti, hello. Nice of you to join us. Thank you. So good. We've got quite a few people that have joined us already. Hi, Brad. How you doing? This is really good. I'm really chuffed. Thank you very much, guys, for joining in. I really do appreciate it. So today, whilst we're waiting for a few people to join in and get connected, I'm going to be doing a little presentation. No problem, Cedric. Don't worry. You just follow what you can. It's going to be recorded anyway. So if you want to watch it later, then you'll be able to watch the whole thing whenever you're free. So don't worry too much about it. Okay. So today's presentation is going to be about what is processed food. And some people may think, oh, that's really obvious. But actually, when you think about it, it becomes quite an interesting question. Hey, Stephen, nice of you to join us. So, what is processed food? So, Stephen asked me this. He basically sent me a question saying, can you put in the group what is processed food and what is not processed food? And I was thinking for ages, well, how am I going to answer that um, in an easy and succinct way? And I came to the conclusion that I can't answer that in an easy and succinct way because it's a really interesting and quite a complex question. Um, so I put a message on the group saying to everybody else, what is processed food? What do you think it means when you hear the term processed food? And so I got a few comments back. So I've picked a few of them to post up on here. So the first one is food where some nutrients are removed and chemicals added. Yeah, so the term processed simply means something's being done to the food, whether that's removing stuff or adding stuff, even heating stuff. That's all what processing actually means. So the next one we had is anything that has something done to it after it's picked. Absolutely. So if you pick an apple off a tree, that's not processed. As soon as you do anything to that apple, it becomes processed. Doesn't necessarily make it worse for you or even better for you, but it just means that it becomes processed. And then the next person said, if there is sugar, salt, preservatives, fat added to a fresh ingredient, it's processed. Yeah, adding stuff, taking stuff away. Anything that you do is going to be processing that food. And then the next one we had is mass-produced food, usually loaded with sugar and salt and chemicals you need a PhD to pronounce. Yeah, basically, if it's got something in there that you're having difficulty pronouncing, probably means it's not good for you, but not necessarily. Again, there are certain chemicals that have, chemical names, but they're actually vitamins and minerals and things like that that have been added in to enhance the flavor of the food item. And then the last one I picked out is anything that is not raw. That is about as close as you can get to what unprocessed food is. Because as soon as it's not raw anymore, it's been processed. Just heating something is going to mean that it's processed. So I wanted to kind of give you a few examples, and please do feel free to chip in with suggestions, examples, ideas of your own in the comments. Um, and if you do have any questions, excuse me, if you do have any questions, I'll be doing a quick Q&A at the end of the session as well. So processing food can be as basic as freezing, canning, cooking, baking, drying. Anything that you do to a food to make it edible can be part of processing food. And not all foods are unhealthy that have been processed. But some processed foods are going to contain high levels of sugar, high levels of salt, and high levels of fat. And usually the reason for putting those things in is to make it taste better, to make it last longer. And that's basically it. So not all processed foods are going to be bad for you. Some processed foods actually need to be processed to make it safe, like raw chicken. That's unprocessed, but you wouldn't eat raw chicken because of the danger of salmonella. You're going to want to make sure it's cooked. Same with milk. Milk usually has to be pasteurized. It has to be heated until all the harmful bacteria in it have been removed. So just because something's processed doesn't necessarily mean it's not good for you, but it's how the food is processed and what is added or taken away from that process. So, for example, in the taking away bit, think about white flour, white bread, white pasta. They've had the shells, the fiber removed from the grain that was used to make the flour. So in that processing, they've removed some of the goodness to make it more palatable, to make it taste nicer. Now, I wanted to give you some examples. I did mention on the previous video that I did about an apple. So if you take an apple, and I've gone on to our local supermarket's website and got the nutritional information from it. And so basically, an apple, 100 grams of apple contains, it's 54 calories for a start. It's got less than half a gram of fat in it. And per 100 grams of apple, you've got about 11 grams of carbohydrate, of which 11 grams of sugar. Now, I always find this quite interesting that carbohydrate and sugar seem to be very, very closely related, but they are separate. So if you look at a bag of sugar and the nutritional value of sugar is 100% sugar is 100% carbohydrate. However, certain food items, you'll see carbohydrate is 20 grams, but sugar is only 10 grams. Now, the reason for that is carbohydrate can also be fiber, and fiber isn't absorbed by the body, it's passed straight through, whether it's soluble or insoluble, it just passes through the body. So even though it's a carbohydrate, it doesn't react like a sugar when it's actually inside our bodies. Now, the other thing it could also be is a starch or a resistant starch, which is kind of halfway between fiber and a sugar. So it's much harder for the body to break down. So it's a little bit like fiber, but it does get absorbed. So it's a little bit like sugar. So that's why there's this listing in most food nutritional labels of carbohydrate and sugar. Sometimes they're the same and sometimes there's a difference. So carrying on with the apple, there's about half a gram of protein in 100 grams of apple. So an apple straight at the bag or off the tree, wherever you get your apples from, that's going to be raw. That's going to be unprocessed. So is that good for you? Well, it's still got 2 teaspoons of sugar in every 100 grams. So if you're eating lots and lots of apples, you're going to get lots and lots of sugar in your diet as well. So that's an unprocessed food that is good for you, but you certainly don't want to eat too much of those. So if we then went on to actually process that apple and say, for example, turn it into apple juice. So I had a look at the apple juices on the Sainsbury's website just to see what they have. And I thought, okay, what I'm going to do is going to pick the super duper cheapest supermarket brand version of their apple juice. And I'll do a comparison of a premium brand apple juice. You may have heard of it, Innocent. So let's start with the cheap supermarket own brand first of all. So for 100 milliliters of apple juice, you're looking at about 46 calories. Again, hardly any fat in there, less than half a gram. Carbohydrates. So per 100 mils, there's about 10 grams of carbohydrate, of which 9 grams of those are actually sugar, and 1 point something grams is starch. So that's where the starches have come in. How they've got the starch, I'm not quite sure because it wasn't in the original apple, but there you go. So looking further down, we see that there's not really any protein, and there's virtually no salt in that cheap supermarket own brand apple juice. So I'm going to pop back and forward to these two, but here is the premium brand Innocent apple juice. So for same quantity, 100 mils, they are saying it's about 45 calories. So the cheap one was 46, the premium brand is 45 calories. So really not a lot in it. Carbohydrates. So carbohydrates in the cheap one was 10.5, and carbohydrates in the expensive one, 11 grams. So again, really not that much different. And the sugars in the cheap one is 9.2 grams, and in the expensive one, 9.5 grams. So it's a tiny bit more sugar in the expensive brand. Now, it doesn't tell me whether there's any other fibers or starches in there because they're not always listed. So it's interesting to see that it hasn't actually made really any difference at all whether you bought the really cheap one or the really expensive one. And I say cheap, this cheap one is about 80 pence per litre. And the expensive one was about £2.50 for 150, about 150 mils. So it's about 20 times the price. Excuse my maths if that's not right, but anyway. So the other interesting thing is this is per 100 mils. Now, who drinks 100 mils of orange juice? It's really not going to be that common that you just have 100 mils of orange juice. So they're saying that a serving is 150 mils. Now, if you think about 150 mils, that's kind of about the same quantity as half a can of Coke. So again, unless you have a really small quantity of orange juice, which is quite unlikely, you're probably going to have a decent glass of it. Then it's going to be a lot higher in sugar when you have your orange juice. So let's just assume you're going to have about a can sized worth of orange juice. That's going to be 3 times the 100 mils, about 330-ish. So that's going to be approximately 30 grams of sugar in a glass of apple juice. 30 grams. So 5 grams is about a teaspoon. So, you're looking at 6 teaspoons of sugar in that apple juice. We just had a question in from Brad. So what about the sodium levels between the two? Actually, interestingly, there's virtually no sodium, no salt in either of these apple juices. So the cheap one or the expensive one, um, it's minimal. It's in the cheap one, it's listed as 0.06 grams. So it is a really, really small amount. But obviously, if you're watching your salt intake, you have it because you have high blood pressure, then it might be something to consider. And do check the nutrition labels for your own brand that you buy. All right. So apple juice, apples, raw, apple juice, processed. Suddenly you see there's an awful lot of sugar in a glass of apple juice that you're having. Um, oh, and we got a question here from Don as well. Let's have a look. What does Don say? I remember my doctor telling me orange juice was the worst thing to drink. Eat an orange, he said. Now I know why. Exactly. um, yeah, don't drink fruit juice. Don't drink it. It's had so much of the good stuff removed, the fiber, just the actual sort of cellular parts of the the fruit or the apple, the orange, or whatever you're having, has all been removed, and it basically and makes it much easier for your body to absorb. So you'll suddenly get this rush of sugar being sort of drawn into your body. So yeah, do not, if you can avoid it, do not have fruit juice. I mean, in fact, fruits themselves, I would even suggest that if you want to have fruit, I would restrict yourself to only 2 pieces a day because there's still quite a lot of sugar in the fruit that you're having, even if it's not processed at all. So let's go back to my list of things here. So, the next one I brought up, because I think somebody mentioned this in one of the comments before, is pork. So, obviously, everybody's favorite pork is bacon. Um, Having a look at the ingredients of pork in bacon. If you buy, I was looking at streaky bacon here, so I was getting the really sort of fatty stuff. In streaky bacon, in a packet of streaky bacon, there's only 87% pork in it. So it kind of makes you think, well, what is the other 13% in there? And this is also quite an interesting point if you're not used to reading ingredients labels. Ingredients labels are listed in the order of quantity of those each individual items. So the first item on the list of ingredients is the item that there is the most of. And then it decreases as it goes down the list. So you don't know necessarily how much of that ingredient's in there, but you can kind of work out by how far down the list it is. So 87% pork is the first ingredient. Second ingredient, water. So how do they keep the water in the pork? With the third ingredient, which is salt. So when you're buying bacon, you're buying pork, only 87%, water. So it's probably going to be about 10% water. And then the salt is there to keep the water inside the pork. And then it's got a load of other additives, antioxidants, preservatives, and it's packaged in a protective atmosphere. So it's got some kind of a gas that's put into the packaging to help it keep fresh. Now, compare that to a pork loin. When I looked at the ingredients here, it actually didn't list any. And that's because in the UK, if it says what it is on the front of the pack and there's nothing else in it, they don't actually have to list any ingredients. So in the pork loin, there is just pork. There's no salt. There's no water. There's no antioxidants or preservatives, although it is still packaged in a protective atmosphere. And I think that's just to stop it sort of going that funny green color that pork can do if it's exposed to air. So if you are yearning for some pork, skip the bacon and go straight for a pork loin instead. So let's move on to the next item. So I've just got one more to go because I didn't want to make this presentation too long. But the next one, I had to do cereal, box cereal, because if you know anything about my previous presentations, you know I have a real bugbear with boxed cereals. So I thought I'll give the box cereals a chance, and I'm going to pick Kellogg's no added sugar granola. So I thought, come on, this is really targeted at people that want to be healthier, want to buy healthy food. So, first of all, Kellogg's say there's no added sugar in this granola. So let's just explore this and go through the ingredients. So the first ingredient is cereals. 67% of the product is made up of cereals, which includes barley flakes, oats, and whole rye, wheat flour, and oat flour. So you think, okay, yeah, that's pretty good. There's no sugar in there so far. The next ingredient is date paste. At approximately 15% of the product is date paste. Now, date paste is obviously made from dates that have been dried and then blitzed in the blender to make a paste. Dates are approximately 50% carbohydrate, of which 50% of that approximately is sugar. So they've added at least 7% sugar, but by using dates instead. The next is sunflower oil, and then they've added nuts, and then they've added banana puree. Bananas are really high in carbohydrate. In fact, the more yellow a banana is, the higher in carbohydrate and sugar the banana is. So you have absolutely no way of telling how ripe that banana was when they blitzed it and put it in, and how much sugar is in there. We'll carry on, shall we? Coconut, 2%. Okay. Natural flavorings, whatever that is, who knows? Could be anything. And then the next one is barley malt extract. That's sugar. Barley malt extract is sugar extracted from barley. That's what it is. It's just sugar, but it's a different name. And then the last bit is salt. So, out of the ingredients of this no added sugar cereal, they've got 3 items in there that have a high concentration of sugars. Anyway, so let's have a look at the nutritional information. So per 100 grams, you got 449 calories. Bear in mind that a sandwich is usually about 300. 18 grams of fat, 59 grams of carbohydrate, of which 12 is sugar. Okay, so it's not as bad as it sounds, but you're still looking at 3 teaspoons per 100 grams of sugar. They got 8.5 grams of fiber, 8.5 grams of protein, and 0.2 grams of salt in there. Now, that's per 100 grams. They reckon that a serving of cereal is usually about 30 grams. Now, I don't think I would have ever had 30 grams of cereal unless I was about 5 to 7 years old. And that's how much 30 grams looks like. It's a kid's portion. There's no way that you guys or me or anyone is having 30 grams a serving of cereal. You're going to be having more than that. So let's say it's not going to be 100 grams, but it's going to be, I don't know, 60 grams instead. So double what they recommend. That's going to be 24 grams of sugar in there. So let's try an alternative. My favorite, whole rolled porridge oats. Ingredients: 100% oats, no salt, no sugar, no date paste, no banana puree, no malt extract, no salt, no nothing. It's oats. That's what you're getting in there. So the difference between the nutrition of the no added sugar granola and the oats. So no added sugar granola is 449 calories, oats 363. Let's go straight for the most exciting one, sugar. So carbohydrates, again, carbohydrates are actually pretty much the same. It's 59 grams of carbohydrate in the granola and 60.5 in the oats. However, 1.1 grams are sugar. The rest of it is going to be sort of a resistant starch or slow release carbohydrate or fiber. So out of that 59%, 59 grams of the 60 grams of carbohydrate, 59 grams of those are starch. 8.3 grams is fiber. So you can see that although it has the same level of carbohydrate, the type of carbohydrate that is contained within it is totally different. It's a much slower release type of carbohydrate, and it's much higher in, actually no, it's about the same in fiber, so I'll take that back. So there you go. Kellogg's no added sugar granola has got 3 types of sugar in it and about 24 grams of sugar, which is going to be about 5 teaspoons of sugar. So processed foods fall on a spectrum from minimally to heavily processed. Minimally processed foods such as spinach or cut vegetables or roasted nuts are just prepared for convenience. And so that kind of processing, it's fine. Processing is required for some foods to lock in their nutrition, like freezing peas, berries, those sorts of things. That's all great way of processing things. Or canning stuff, canning things like tomatoes. Tomatoes are actually better for you the more they've been cooked. So the fact that they've been cooked once by being put into a can, you then take them out and make them into your own sauce or whatever. Cook them for longer. They actually release more of their goodness when you process them. So actually processing cans of tomatoes is really good. Tuna as well, another great way of preserving good quality protein. So if foods have added things for flavor, like sweeteners or oils or preservatives, like a jar of pasta sauce, they're going to be adding a lot of sugar and sweets and salts. Oh, and we got Don's just weighed a typical bowl of cereal he enjoys, and it's 87 grams. 87 grams. So just have a look on that box, Don, for me. What does it say is a typical serving? Because it's usually on the nutrition label. What is it? What is a typical serving of that cereal? Because I can guarantee they haven't put on there 87 grams. They put on something like 30 or something like that. That's brilliant. Thank you so much for doing that. That's hilarious. No, go on, do it. He's saying he's afraid to do that. No, please go ahead and do that. That's brilliant. Thank you so much for doing that. Right, so what else have we got here? Ready to eat foods such as crackers, granola, deli meat, they're all going to be heavily processed. They're going to have salt, they're going to have sugar. Even if they're not calling it sugar, it's fucking sugar. Yeah, so right, he's just 37 grams is what they say on the box is a serving. And yet a typical serving for Don is actually 87 grams. So when you have a look at the nutrition label on the back, you have to multiply that at least twice to work out exactly how much you're getting. It drives me insane how they put these ridiculous numbers on there. Anyway, but I'm getting quite irate about sugar now. Right, so concentrate, Paul. Heavily processed foods, pizza, microwavable dinners, things like that. Now, Stephen, I know I haven't answered your question completely because you asked me to give you a list of what foods are processed and what foods aren't. And as you can see from everything I've gone through today, it's just not possible to tell you what's processed and what's not. And even if I did, it doesn't mean that it's unhealthy for you. You're going to have a real think about what's been added and what has been taken away. So I'm going to open the floor to anybody that wants to ask any questions or anything. And whilst I wait for people to post their questions about what we've been discussing, I'm going to play a little video for you. So please do post your questions in the comments box. And if you are watching this recorded, please go ahead and post them anyway, because I will go back and review the questions and find out what you were asking and reply back to you. Okay, so brace yourself. Here comes the video. I'm Paul Bailey and I'm a qualified nutrition coach. I take a more holistic approach to health, focusing on nutrition, but also fitness and, even more importantly, mindset, which includes stress management, confidence building, and of course, self-care. I've struggled with being that skinny, scrawny kid to being an overweight adult and everywhere in between. I've tried every fad diet and workout routine, but ended up having my cholesterol spiraling out of control and suffering from poor self-image. Until I decided I was going to have to take a more science-backed approach to my health. Through my one-to-one coaching, I've helped hundreds of guys like you learn to love food again without guilt or shame, and still be able to lose weight and get rid of that belly, get fitter and healthier. None of them feel like they're missing out because no food is off the menu. That's because it's more about the quantity and quality of what you eat. I help them keep on track no matter what life throws at them. Whether you have yet to start, or you've already made some progress, or you're looking to really push yourself to a whole new level, I can help. So, if you're fed up with yo-yo dieting, struggling with diabetes, high blood pressure or cholesterol, or just want to get healthier generally, get in touch and find out how easy eating healthier can be. There you go. So we've only got one question that's come in, and I'll just put it on the screen now. This is from Brad. Is there any type of breads we should look at, or just leave it all alone? I like bread. There's lots of people that love bread. Again, it's the quantity and the quality that makes the difference. Usually, when I start working with a client, I can see that they just have way too much bread. Like a couple of slices for toast for breakfast, a couple of slices in their sandwiches, and maybe a roll for dinner. That's like half a loaf of bread you've had in one day. It's just way too much. So rather than cutting it out, which can work if you are a real carboholic, then going low carb is probably something you might really benefit from. But if you're going to have bread, have one slice, not two. Have wholemeal bread and have something with as many seeds in it as possible. Not the ones with just the sprinkling of seeds on top, but the seeds that are actually inside. Now, I did do a post on my personal Facebook page, which you can have a look on there, about the you have to be really careful which ones you buy, because I found that there was one that was actually white bread and one that was wholemeal, but the white bread had more seeds in it. So I'd fallen for the marketing, and I'd been buying white bread. So you just have to be careful. Try and limit the amount of bread that you're having. Um, don't rely on it as a filler, and then you should be okay. All right. I haven't had any other questions come in, so I will leave it there. I hope you guys have found this useful. Please do continue to post any comments, questions that you have, and I will get back to you afterwards. And as always, if you need any help personally, don't hesitate to contact me for some information about how we could work together one to one. All right. You take care. Cheers then. Bye bye.